Well, we know Halloween has come and gone. We mentioned that last week.
We did.
But that's not going to stop us from talking about spooky shit.
We're spooky bitches.
We are. And you know what? I'm thankful that we're covering something like this today, because I think if we were talking about something like a serial killer, I'd just be even angrier than I am. So, like, this is, I mean, nothing we really talk about is lighthearted.
No.
But this is on the more lighthearted part of the spectrum.
Yes, absolutely. And
Okay.
I mean, we have a few episodes from now, we're doing a new series about a very, very terrible man who's going to make us angry. So I feel like we're doing these episodes to just kind of like give us life.
It's like a self-care episode.
Yes, very much so. It's a palate cleanser self-care episode.
Man.
Still horrific, still probably going to upset us.
Yeah.
But it's good.
Yeah. I mean, you know what? If you are new to us, welcome. Hi. We talk about some pretty dark shit.
Yeah.
But if you're a longtime listener, you know the deal.
You know what's up.
Sometimes we got to talk about some ghosts.
Yeah. And demons.
And demons.
Shall
we have extras the demons.
We're gonna try. Let's go.
Hello, everyone. I'm Charlotte.
And I'm Dina. Welcome to the Grim Curriculum.
So yeah, this story has a little bit of everything for you guys.
It sure does. We've got ghosts. We've got demons. We've even got Zak Bagans making an appearance.
That's how you know it's legit.
Yep. I feel like it's either him or Ed and Lorraine Warren. It's like there's this like fork in the road.
Yes. Yeah. It's kind of like the stamp of haunted.
Absolutely.
Quote unquote authenticity, but like you guys know.
Yeah.
So we've got a good old-fashioned haunting episode for you all today.
Today we are talking about the haunting of the Ammons family. This story not only inspired Mr. Bagans to make his Demon House documentary, it most recently gained notoriety when it inspired the 2024 Netflix movie, The Deliverance. Have you seen it?
I have not, but I think the title is a little too close to another movie called Deliverance.
100%.
Do you know what I mean?
I don't, like, they kind of use that word a lot in the movie and they explain why they chose it. But really, when I first saw it, I was just like, not the best choice of a title.
No, I mean, strictly from like a marketing standpoint, the second you type Deliverance into any search engine, it's probably not going to bring this up.
Yeah, and it didn't get the best ratings. But in my opinion, it's a good paranormal horror.
Okay.
It's not bad. It's worth a watch. I know a lot of people, I'm including both of us in this, feel that a story is much scarier when there are children involved.
Yes.
And this is a prime example of that. And I will say the movie has Glenn Close in it.
Oh, I've seen the trailer for sure.
There you go. Yeah.
Okay, yes. Okay.
I suggest watching it. It's really not like the best movie I've seen this year, but it's a good watch.
And I do love Glenn Close. She's fantastic.
Me too.
As always, we like to approach our haunting stories with a healthy dose of both belief, but also skepticism.
Our story takes place in Gary, Indiana, a city once known as the murder capital of the United States.
Whoa.
The following events were witnessed by LaToya Ammons, her 3 children, and her mother, Rosa Campbell.
What makes this particular haunting so shocking is not only that they claim that there was a paranormal presence in the home, but they also say they were visited by over 200 demons.
It's a lot of demons.
I mean, like, that is an open house for demons. They're just coming in and out.
The story also involves a series of visits from the Department of Child Services, the police, a number of psychologists, and ultimately, exorcisms. And I'm going to say you're going to like this a lot.
Okay.
The police officers in this story are like something out of like a buddy comedy movie.
Oh no.
And it is, oh my God. It just, you'll see. You'll see. It's kind of great.
Her account of this particular tale was originally published in 2014 and has since gained the attention of many. LaToya gave an interview to The Star where she was very open about her experiences. She did this under the condition that her children would not be named or interviewed.
She did allow for The Star to review various medical and psychological records that were not open to the public. Despite her belief in what was going on with her family, not everyone was convinced. A lot of our information today comes from the interviews that she did with Star.
In November of 2011, the family moved to a rental property at 3860 Carolina Street in Gary. It was a small but comfortable one-story house with a basement. At this time, the children were 7, 9, and 12 years old,
Like many hauntings, this story starts with flies.
which is very
It
Amityville.
is, isn't it? Which, by the way, you should listen to that
Oh
series.
yeah, we
That was a
covered them
fun
too.
one. I like Amityville.
Amityville is actually one of my favorite kind of
Me
haunting
too.
stories. I know we all have our kind of favorites. It was one that I think I watched the movie with Ryan Reynolds in like grade 7 or grade 8 or
Mhm.
whatever. And that was before even he was kind of big and, the movie star he is today. So many of you listening may be thinking, though, flies aren't exactly a strange thing. But this was throughout November and December during a particularly cold year. There were no other insects around. The family would kill the flies on a regular basis, but they kept coming back, which is the worst.
Yeah, this is annoying.
I mean, if you've even dealt with like fruit flies in your kitchen or
Yeah.
whatever, they're the worst.
Things continued to get stranger when Latoya and Rosa both heard creaking and heavy footsteps coming from the basement. Eventually, they could hear the sounds going up the stairs to the main floor and witness the doorknob turning. Whenever they'd investigate, they'd see that no one was there.
And they kept the basement door locked, but the sounds continued. Don't like that.
No. One night, Rosa awoke to see a shadowy figure of a man pacing in the living room. She then saw large, wet boot prints where she heard the sounds, and in some reports, she describes him as a sexy, shadowy figure.
I mean, hey, whatever first comes to your mind, I
Yeah.
guess. This escalated to her claiming to feel hands around her throat that choked her so hard she felt like she was going to pass out.
On March 10th of 2012, things took a turn for the worse. It was around 2 a.m. Now, normally the family would have been fast asleep, but during this evening, they were up. Someone close to them had passed away, and they had spent the night in mourning. Latoya's daughter and a friend of hers were sound asleep in Rosa's room.
Suddenly, Latoya was heard screaming for Rosa, who quickly ran to see what was going on. They claimed that the 12-year-old was levitating above her bed and was unresponsive. They gathered together and prayed until this stopped.
Her daughter has no memory of this, and those who were visiting at the time refused to return to the home.
I can't really blame them, to be honest.
I'm not coming over.
Especially after a funeral, too.
Yes.
So, grief and death is very much at the top of your mind.
Mhm.
And then you witness something crazy like this.
I'd be like, I don't have the mental capacity for this.
Mm-mm. On another occasion, the oldest son was thrown across the room by an unseen force. The youngest boy was reported to have had an episode where his eyes rolled back into his head as he growled, saying things like, "It's time to die, and I'll kill you."
After this, Latoya and Rosa decided that something needed to be done. They knew that they needed to talk to someone about what was going on, despite the fact that they had no clue what was actually happening.
They began calling various churches, but many brushed them off. Eventually, she found one that would listen. They told her that the house had spirits residing within it. Officials suggested that she clean the home with bleach and ammonia and then use olive oil to draw crosses on the windows and the children's feet.
And you're not supposed to mix bleach and ammonia, just FYI.
Okay.
So thank you, church.
I was gonna say, don't mix your household cleaning products
No.
that can have some very scary and dangerous and very instantaneous bad effects.
You're going to start seeing demons one way or
No
another.
kidding. Rosa and Latoya reached out to various mediums. Two of them said that the home was not only haunted, but it had been taken over by 200 demons. The family was religious, and this explanation made sense to them.
It was highly suggested to them just to pack up and move. However, the family could not afford to, and they were forced to stay.
Another medium told them to make an altar in their basement. Latoya did as instructed and covered a small table with a white sheet. On it, she placed a candle, as well as a Bible and a statue of Jesus, Mary, and Joseph.
They then burned sage throughout the house. They ensured to get every corner of every room while they read Psalm 91.
You will not fear the terror of night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that stalks the darkness, nor the plague that destroys at midday.
This brought them a mere 3 days of peace, and then things got way worse.
This is when they claim the demons turned their attention fully towards the three children. On multiple occasions, the children's eyes bulged as they smiled evilly and spoke in deep, hoarse voices.
Latoya did state that the demons had possessed her on multiple occasions, but they were relatively unsuccessful because she was not as vulnerable as the kids. She claimed that whenever this happened, she would feel warm and lightheaded, but it would soon be over.
It was around this time that the youngest son found himself a little friend.
The kind of friend you really don't want your kid telling you that they have.
He told Latoya that he began speaking to a little boy who lived in their house, specifically in his closet. This little boy would sit and talk with him about what it felt like to die.
Fantastic.
Man, again, we've talked about imaginary friends
Mhm.
before, and that's all fine and dandy. Perfectly healthy, perfectly normal. Many kids go through imaginary friend stages. This is a little different.
Yeah, I don't like it.
I don't like it at all.
Soon after this, Latoya reported that the youngest son also flew out of the bathroom as if someone had picked him up and flung him out with all of their strength.
These encounters were not only getting more physical, but they were becoming increasingly violent. Her daughter began telling her that she would often feel like someone was holding her down so hard that she couldn't speak or move. Not only that, she said she was thrown headfirst into the frame of her bed so hard that it would require stitches.
It became so bad that the family would stay in a hotel whenever they could afford it. Eventually, Latoya went to her physician, Dr. Onyukwu, and told him what was going on. This was detailed in some of the medical notes that were released.
The doctor stated that Latoya had, and I quote, delusions of ghosts in the home and quote unquote hallucinations. By this point, the events had also drawn the attention of the Department of Children's Services, especially considering the incident that was severe enough for her daughter to require stitches.
That's a hard thing to explain away.
Yeah, because quite frankly, if the Department of Child Safety comes to your door and asks why your children required stitches, if you say it was the demons, you're getting your kids taken away.
You're going to be in big trouble.
Dr. Onyukwu visited once again, and once again, things escalated. The following was detailed in a DCS report.
The sons cursed the doctor in demonic voices, and the youngest one was lifted and thrown into a wall by an unseen force.
Both boys then passed out. 911 was called, and several police officers and ambulances showed up.
Latoya stated that medical officials laughed at her as she begged them to let her anoint her children with olive oil. Instead, she prayed. The oldest seemed to recover fine, but her younger son began screaming and thrashing. It took 5 grown men to hold him down.
At this time, an anonymous DCS report was filed against her stating that her children were being neglected and possibly abused. They claimed that Latoya had a mental illness and that the children were acting out to please her.
Their case manager, Valerie Washington, reported that the family was examined and determined to be of sound mind as well as free of any suspicious marks or bruises. She then went on to interview the younger son. During that time, he started growling, and his eyes began rolling in the back of his head. He then grabbed his older brother by the throat so hard that his hands had to be pried open.
He then told his brother that it was time to die.
We want to remind you all that this is in the official DCS report. It's available online with their names omitted.
As he said this, the older brother began headbutting Rosa in the stomach. She stopped him, grabbed his hands, and began praying.
The younger son then grinned and began walking backward up the wall towards the ceiling while holding Rosa's hand. The nurse who was overseeing them at the time was asked by police if this was some sort of acrobatic trick. She stated that he glided back onto the floor and ceiling, and that was in her official police report.
Absolutely not. Whenever anyone is like walking backwards or upside down, no.
Or on all fours
No,
or
no,
anything like that.
no.
And the thing is, like, one of the main arguments here is he was holding her hand as he did this. And so they're saying that she like helped him do it. And
She could have kind of,
him up.
yeah.
But in the police report, she's like, that wasn't the case. It was weird. He was like gliding. I can't explain it.
And for a nurse to
Yes.
say that, a medical professional that has no skin in the game, so
Exactly.
to speak, right? She's just here to check things out. She then ran out of the room and the boy ran after her. When a doctor asked him to climb the wall again, he said he couldn't remember doing it. The nurse stated that she believed that the boy had a demon spirit in him, but that the behavior was likely the result of mental illness.
As of this point, DCS determined that they had to intervene. They took emergency action and gained temporary custody of the children without a court order.
The hospital chaplain heard about all of this and phoned Reverend Michael Maginot. He asked him to perform an exorcism on the 9-year-old son. At first, he declined, but then he agreed that he would at least meet with the family.
He spoke with Rosa and Latoya. As they were talking in the home, a bathroom light began to flicker. Whenever it started, the Reverend walked over to it and it would stop. He took this to believe that this was a demon trying to communicate with him.
After a few moments, the blinds began to move as if there were a breeze. They looked, but the window was closed. Latoya began complaining of a headache that would increase whenever she had a crucifix placed near her head.
He interviewed them for 4 hours. This led to him confirming in his mind that demons were involved. He blessed the home and encouraged the two to stay with a relative for a while.
They listened to him for about a week, but returned with a DCS case manager to review the state of the home along with a police officer. The two other police officers asked to join them out of curiosity. As they investigated the home, their voice recorders all malfunctioned despite having fresh batteries. They momentarily got them working and reported to record a voice saying, "Hey,
Hey,
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 how's it going,
hi."
cops?"
And that's one of the things that's going to start with the cops is like they had one guy who was supposed to come. And then there's these other two cops. They're like, dude, can we tag along?
I
Like,
mean,
this
I
is
can
crazy.
kind of understand the
Of
curiosity.
course. One of the police officers took pictures with his phone that were said to show a cloudy white image that resembled a face. When one of them went to drive home, he said that his radio malfunctioned and his garage door wouldn't open. The driver's side seat of his personal vehicle also began to move forward and backwards on its own.
I bet you he regretted entering that house.
Yeah.
It's very much, if you guys have seen The Grudge or the original like Ju-on, it's like
Yes.
you're fine if you don't enter the building, but once you enter the building, she's got you. In April of 2012, DCS was granted further custody of the kids. They stated that Latoya had neglected her children's education by taking them out of school on a regular basis. This was something that they had found had happened in 2009 as well.
She would say that there were certain times that the kids couldn't go to school because they didn't sleep due to the spirits. The daughter and oldest son were sent to a home in Chicago, and the youngest was sent for further psychiatric evaluation.
The psychologist who evaluated him said that he acted possessed whenever he was challenged, but seemed fine otherwise. She wrote,
This appears to be an unfortunate and sad case of a child who has been induced into a delusional system perpetrated by his mother and potentially reinforced.
professionals claimed that the children were influenced by their mother. They continued to say that what they had claimed was true. DCS set terms for the family to help with healing. One of them was to ban talk of demons entirely.
They also said that Latoya had to find a different place for them to live.
Honestly, I think big step one, right?
Yeah, don't talk about demons and move.
Exactly. During all of this, officials continued to investigate the house. On one visit, Rosa, Latoya, the DCS officer, the Reverend, and two police officers visited the home. They were joined by another two police officers from Lake County who brought with them a police dog.
These guys aren't even part of the investigation. They're just like, we got a dog.
Let's see
Let's
if the
do
dog
this.
figures anything out.
Unfortunately, the dog didn't react to anything in the house. As they went into the basement, they reported seeing a strange liquid dripping that they described as slippery and sticky.
They also decided to check the dirt under the stairs for anything out of the ordinary. They found a press-on fingernail, underwear, a pin, and socks with the bottoms cut off. They then filled the hole they had dug. The Reverend blessed the area.
Samantha Illich, a case manager for DCS, claimed that her left pinky finger began to feel as though something had been broken in it. She then said she was having a panic attack and had to leave. The Reverend began asking Latoya questions, and she said her head was hurting so bad that she wanted to join Samantha outside.
I know in cases like this, there's, for me at least, there's a part of me that really wants to believe you. Like,
Yeah.
you really believe that there is something demonic or whatever happening in your house. But on the other hand, I'm like, is there like a gas leak that's making everyone go crazy and feel ill? Like, is there not a more scientific thing that could explain all
Right?
this?
Like something weird with like the electrical currents in the
Mhm.
house that are just like making you feel uneasy because that's the thing.
I mean, I know that sort of like group delusion can be a
Mhm.
thing, and it would make more sense to me if the family members, obviously, if they were all in on this, that they would experience wild and crazy things. But to have all these different people from different walks of lives
Yes.
too. That to me is just very odd. One of the police officers, who was a seasoned homicide detective, ended up leaving as well because he said that he refused to be at the house after dark.
Those who remained noticed an oil-like substance leaking from the blinds. They cleaned it up and sealed the room for 45 minutes. When they returned, it was back. The Reverend wrote a report on his findings and sent it to Bishop Melzick, who was the acting diocese of Gary, and he asked him to perform an official exorcism.
Because that's the important thing when it comes to Catholic exorcisms.
Yes.
You have to have very special permission. You
Yep.
can't just be going around exorcising demons willy-nilly. Like,
No.
you have to ask the proper permission from much higher people in the Catholic Church.
It's a huge process.
And all that to say, the bishop denied the request and told him to speak to other priests. And when he did, he explained to them that he needed instructions on how to perform a minor exorcism so that it wouldn't require permission from the church.
They essentially told him to Google it.
That's wild.
Yeah, he's like, I need your help. What can I do? They're like, look it up.
I mean, hey, there isn't too much that you can't learn on the internet these days. I wouldn't recommend Google researched exorcisms.
I also, like, out of everyone in this story, these guys are not the heroes.
No, it sure doesn't seem that
They're
way.
like, nah.
So he did do some Googling, and he performed what he called a quote-unquote intense blessing on the home. The same day, he did a ritual on LaToya that consisted of prayers and appeals to cast out demons. The two police officers, Samantha Illich and DCS, attended the ritual, and it took 2 hours.
I love that the police officers were a part of this.
Again, I can't fault them for their curiosity.
They're in it.
Absolutely.
They're like, you know what? We've come this far. We're committed. I want to see how this ends.
Because on one hand, I would want to just observe purely to see.
Yeah.
Just to see. I'm curious about how this is going down. You're probably not going to get an experience like this again in your life. You may as well take part if you're interested. But on the other hand, what if something very real would have happened? Then you probably would be changing your minds about your curiosity towards all
absolutely.
this.
Samantha stated that afterwards she felt as if something evil had attached itself to her. She began experiencing a string of horrible luck, which included third-degree burns from a motorcycle, a broken hand because she hit it on the table, a jet ski accident, and a broken ankle. On top of all of that, her friends started to avoid her because they were like, girl, you cursed.
That makes me sad. And again, I can't really blame them. Meanwhile, the Reverend encouraged LaToya to look up the names of different demons and attribute them to the ones she thought were in her home. Amongst them was Beelzebub, Lord of the Flies, which kind of makes sense considering all the flies we were seeing. And as she was on her computer looking up these names, the power began flickering and she felt dizzy.
After all of this, the bishop finally agreed to help. He performed 3 separate exorcisms on her, 2 in English and 1 in Latin. The 2 police officers, who were now more than invested in this, stood nearby to help if needed.
I wonder if they even had jurisdiction to do so, or if they were purely just showing up because they're like, we're in it now.
I think they're off the clock. I genuinely think they were just like, hey, can we watch?
We're down to be a part of this
Yeah.
if you want us there. LaToya said that she felt something inside of her that was trying to come out and compared it to the pain of childbirth. Eventually, she fell asleep.
After all of this, the nightmare seemed to be over. The family moved to Indianapolis.
The house became a source of public curiosity. The landlord actually had to ask the police officers to stop driving past it because it was upsetting the new tenants, who reported nothing strange in the home.
LaToya regained custody of her children in November of 2012. They all stated that the event stopped for them as well.
To skeptics, LaToya stated,
when you hear something like this, don't assume it's not real, because I've lived it and I know it's real.
Tragically, LaToya's youngest son passed away in 2021 at the age of 17. The cause of his death has not been released. Oh, that's really sad.
I was looking up to kind of see, like, where are they now kind of thing. And the names of her kids are available online, but she was very specific when she gave the interview. She's like, I will talk to you. I just don't want my kids' names involved, which is why we didn't use them in the episode.
Absolutely, yeah.
And when I was looking it up, I saw that and I found his obituary.
Oh,
And
man.
yeah, they don't really say what happened to him, but he was 17 and yeah, really sad. This family had a very hard go of it.
I mean, okay, so let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it.
If the hauntings, quote unquote, if that's what you would call them, possessions, whatever, demonic visitations,
Mhm.
stopped after they left, and if you believe in this sort of thing, if that's what you think was happening to
Mhm.
them, then obviously it's not the house that's haunted, it's the demons that have attached themselves to you
Yeah.
personally. However, everything did seem to stop after that, and
Yeah.
the new family that moved in said they didn't see anything in particular.
And neither did the family that lived there before.
Interesting. But when it comes to demonic stories, a lot of the times, and I mean, you see this in a lot of the Ed and Lorraine related
Mhm.
things, these sort of strange, supernatural, demonic things seem to happen when people or families are very vulnerable
Yes.
and in a lot of turmoil or a lot of high stress
Mhm.
situations, which it does seem like was going on here. Plus, if you add in the extra toil of mental health that affects
Yeah.
everyone, and it clearly seems like everyone was being affected in their own way, shape, or
Mhm.
form. I mean, I think it's a cauldron of all these different negative energies that just come together in a big way.
It was, and I mean, in her mind, she's struggling. She's very
Mhm.
clearly
Yes,
struggling, both mentally. She's also struggling financially. That's a really big part of this
absolutely.
too.
Well, you said it yourself. They would have moved away if they were able to afford it.
Exactly. And she had had some history with the Department of Children's Services
Mhm.
in the past.
Yeah,
This was a family that had experienced a lot of trauma to begin with. And a lot of times we see negative energies attach themselves to people who have
totally.
experienced that because, like you said, they're vulnerable.
Yes, 100%. And kids as well are automatically more vulnerable. Like, I mean, if you think of it in the terms of like kids are more open to things
Yeah.
because they haven't had sort of society's expectations like fully pressed on them yet. But also, some people say, the older you are or the younger you are, you're closer to the other side.
Yes.
So maybe that's why they're a little more open to these types of things. But like you say, I mean, if you're a demon,
Hmm.
you're going to pick an easy target,
Yeah.
and vulnerable, traumatized children, I mean, you don't get a much easier target than that, really.
Especially when you look at, we've talked about this before, young girls who are undergoing puberty, but
Yep,
also boys too. And these were
totally.
pubescent and prepubescent kids. So they're kind of at that like prime time in their lives to be experiencing something like this. Now, I do wonder, I mean, we can take the other approach of, were they being neglected by her and this was the only way that they could get attention? And if you're constantly hearing there's demons, there's demons, there's demons, and you're 7 to 12 years old,
Susceptible
you're going to say,
to,
well,
yeah, these
there's demons.
suggestions. Absolutely. Especially when it's coming from someone like your mom or someone you
Mhm.
trust. And if Latoya was having severe mental health issues, which obviously she was, like you say, kids are people pleasers, and that's your
Absolutely.
mom. And if yeah, it's a complicated thing. So even if you are a skeptic, there's certainly an explanation for it, I
Yeah.
think. There's always a part of me that so badly wants to believe, and you
Mhm.
see this strange and spooky shit happening, but so often it's pretty explainable.
It is. One thing that does get me is, I'm going to go back to
Mhm.
Amityville.
Yes,
When we talked about Amityville, one of the things that we talked about towards the end was the family made some good money off of it.
they sure did.
And the investigators, of course, the Warrens,
Yeah.
made bank as they always do. Now, Latoya gave this interview, which
Mhm.
she may or may not have been paid for, but in future years, she's not talking about it. No one else outside of this interview is really wanting to talk about it and make money off of it. And that gives me a little bit of credibility because
Mhm.
in the stories where it's like, okay, well, they experienced this, but they also like paid off their house and they went on vacations and they did this or that.
Yes.
I look at the Perrin family when we talked about them and how the house now you can rent parts of it because you're likely to see UFOs in this side of the yard.
Totally.
You know what I
Yeah, yeah,
mean? Like
yeah.
I see that and that kind of takes away the credibility. This one, I am a skeptic, I will say,
Yeah,
but I mean, I'm
same.
an easily convinced skeptic, so I'll give
I
myself that.
want to believe.
I do.
That's
I really want to
thing.
believe. This story here, I kind of teeter back and forth because it's so wild and it's been seen by, like you said, so many different people in different walks of life and professionals at that, that I'm kind of like, okay, well, something was happening. I don't know what, but something was definitely happening.
And I think sometimes as human beings, going all the way back to ancient times, there's a reason why we have mythologies, the Greek gods, the Norse gods, because we've used those stories to explain things we couldn't explain in the past, weather or crops dying or whatever. I think to some degree, as I'm not a religious person, as we know, you can get real philosophical with this. Are demons our way of explaining these horrible mental health crisis sort of situations? Like, even when you're talking about someone that's having a rough go of it, an addict or, someone like that, you say, yeah, they got their demons, right? So is it just that kind of persuasion and suggestion? And when you're mentally ill, you start to sort of carve a story that makes sense to you.
We need that comfort, absolutely.
Exactly. And I think when there are no answers, even demons as an answer provides a little bit of comfort. Okay, it's demons, at least we kind of know what we're dealing with here. Whereas if it's just like, oh no, we're all just fucking mentally ill because life is stressful, that's, how do you battle that?
Absolutely.
Whereas, like, at least if you're saying, well, no, it's a demon. Okay, cool. We have people that know about this. We can call our reverends. We can call our, Catholic priests and stuff like that. I don't know.
And these are deeply religious people. So, of course, that's the route that they're going to take. In religion, you learn about demons. And for a lot of people, they are a very real thing because you grow up hearing about them. And I think that was the case. But I mean, it's a wild story. Let us know, thegrimcurriculum@gmail.com. What do you think?
I want to know your guys' thoughts on this because we've talked about Amityville and quite a few other hauntings at this point. Do you think this one is any more real than the others, or do you kind of remain a skeptic when it comes to this sort of stuff? I'm curious to know, has there been a story that maybe we haven't talked about where you're like, nah, girl, this was the one that got me? Because we want to hear about that too, and we'd love to talk about it. So yeah,
definitely.
I think I'm going to remain a skeptic on this one.
I think so too.
Unfortunately.
All right, everyone. Don't forget, we have merch.
We do.
You should buy it. That is what I have to say about that.
I mean, really, that's very laconic of you. The less words necessary to get the point across.
Also, we have a Patreon, which you should also take a look at. There is an early episode reveal for all members, including the free ones. You can do a free trial as well to see the paid content, which includes video versions of the episodes. Hello, we're waving. A Discord, and all sorts of super fun stuff. And if you subscribe to our highest tier, you get a shout out at the end of each episode. Charlotte, take it away.
All right. Big, massive, humongous thank you to the VIPs over on Patreon. We have the wonderful Carrie, Atlantean Jedi, Bob, Brian, Hillary, Judy, Kevinus Musicus, Nova, Lisa, Steven Centauri, and Mayhem Mudkip. Thank you.
Thank you.
Y'all are the Titty City.
You are.
Anything else we want to talk about?
I think that's it. Stay away from ghosts. Watch out for demons. And don't Google exorcisms.
I guess not. Thank you all so much for listening. This has been
The Grim Curriculum.
Did you know Thailand has the highest amount of penis amputations? And they call it, quote unquote, feeding the ducks. So if a lady is unimpressed with her husband or a male member of her family, they are known to chop off their wieners and chuck them out the window for the ducks.
Is that real?
Yeah.
Wow.
Bye.
Bye.
Sorry about all the penis trauma lately, guys. I promise you it's not a thing.
That's the last one for a minute, okay? Maybe.
Maybe. I don't know.
We'll see.
We'll see.
Bye.